So, welcome, Steph Taylor. Very excited to have you here today. And this is going to go into my launch week for my podcast. And you've been a massive part of
Ooh.
that launch. So, that's very exciting. And so much so, there's so much stuff that I want to cover off talking to you about that we've decided to break this up into two parts. So, part one of this interview today, we're covering off using podcasting as a marketing medium and the benefits that having a podcast has had for your business. And also, I think it'd be wrong if I didn't talk about the fact that you have a seven-figure online business, which is insane. So that's what we're talking about today. And then I'm going to get you back
Good.
after you've had a month hiatus in Europe to talk about building online courses and why the launch is so important about online courses, which I really, really love about what you do. Is I think that's something a lot of people don't focus on the launch of anything, and it's a really big part of it. So that will be awesome. So, Steph, to start us off, what is your elevator pitch for your business?
It changes quite a lot. And I'll disclaim this and say I don't really have one overall elevator pitch for my business. I have more of an elevator pitch per product. But I guess if you would ask me, like, what do I do? I'm a digital product launch strategist that helps service-based business owners to scale by turning their knowledge into a product and then launching it over and over and over again to help more people make a bigger profit and have that freedom that we all started our businesses for, but that we don't often find that easily because, it's very, very typical to see somebody who's like, like me, fresh out of corporate, and then decides, okay, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to work with my clients on whatever your area of expertise is. And they generally get those clients and they're making a good income and they've built a nice business, but they can't take time off because they've got clients and the clients need energy and attention. And then what happens is they realize, oh, I'm chained to my business. I've hit an income cap because I don't have any more hours left in the day to physically work with any other clients. And that's kind of where I come in and I say, okay, let's now look at how we can build all these other areas into your business. How can we start to turn this into an online business rather than just a service-based business? And when I talk about online business, uh, it's a very vague term. I guess in my world, it means a business that has an online course or a membership or a group program or some other kind of digital product or combinations of digital products that takes people on the overarching journey that we want to create. And for me, that overarching journey is helping people to build the online business of their dreams. And that includes launching a podcast, that includes launching digital products, and it includes growing your audience. Three pretty key components.
I love that. And I can attest for your statement there about being a service based business and getting to a point where you just can't do anymore. So, my main business that I'd sold a couple of years ago when I had my daughter was a financial planning business. And I wish back then maybe I wouldn't have sold in the end because I wouldn't have been so burnt out if I considered maybe moving from a service model to adding in an online course or something like that. So, I think it's probably key to the way that I'm looking at building this business, and building this podcast going forward to stop that happening because it's real. It's hard for business owners in
Oh,
service-based jobs. It's, yeah, challenge.
100%. And also with service-based things is it does also limit who you can help. So when you when you add something like an online course or a membership or some lower price point offering where, yeah, they might not have as much access to you, but they are getting to learn how to do it themselves, that now makes that more accessible to people who couldn't afford to work with you one-on-one. So it means you get to help a whole lot more people and you get to make more money. And it's kind of cool. It's like, and you get to have that freedom. So it's win-win-win.
Absolutely, and again, same thing with financial planning, the rates that people you have to charge for that service is high, so a lot of people don't have access to it, so this is a great way that you're giving access to more people to be able to enjoy your service, so I love it. And next thing I wanted to ask you about was to tell us your startup story, and you've probably moved past startup now. Would you count yourself as a lifestyle business, or what sort of stage would you say that
Yeah. Um, Lifestyle business, but constantly twisting and turning, constantly pivoting and turning. And, like, I don't know if this is going to be my business for now for the next couple of years, but in 5 years' time, I might find that there's something else. I might find that this business just runs itself and I might go and do something else. So I wouldn't consider myself like proper, like startup, I guess. I mean, I've been doing this business as it is now for 4 years. Um, and
So tell us about that. How did we get to this point? How I know
oh
there's
my
been
goodness.
a lot of change, so it's nice to hear this story because like you said, it
Yeah.
doesn't just stay the same, it's always gotta change. So, yeah, talk us through it.
Yeah. Well, so I started out my first business was an e-commerce business. I was in a corporate job. I was bored. I had read one too many Daily Mail stories about, entrepreneur starts up e-commerce business and sells $1 million overnight. And I was like, oh, this is great. I can start an e-commerce business. I'm probably, I've got better marketing knowledge than like most of these people. I'll be fine. And it'll grow really quickly. And within a year, I'll have a team and all of that stuff. And fast forward a year and I did not have a team. I did not have any money. I was back in a job. And I realized pretty quickly that actually, no, e-commerce wasn't where I wanted to be. And it was going to take a lot of work to scale it to the point, a lot of investment, a lot of capital, which I didn't have because I'd quit my job with like maybe $10,000 in the bank. So I realized pretty quickly, like, I am not going to be able to scale this thing quick enough. And until I can scale it, I'm going to be the person who is packing and shipping all the orders. And I'm going to be stuck in Australia when I really just wanted to be able to go overseas and travel. And so I realized, okay, this is not this business. As much as I love the product and I love what I'm doing, it's not the reason I started the business. I started my business for freedom. And so I closed that one down. And then I was sort of floating around. I was working part-time in a marketing role. And that was when I thought, actually, let me start working with some clients as well. Let me just pick up a few clients and start working with them. And I started doing that. And realized, okay, let me start building an agency. Started building an agency. And there was this one moment where I thought, oh, hang on. If I'm running a marketing agency, I'm not going to be the one doing the marketing. I'm going to be the one managing the people. And that was this moment where I thought, okay, let's not do that. In the meantime, I created my first online course, which was a course about Facebook ads, because I had a lot of people who were reaching out to me because they wanted somebody to manage their Facebook ads for them, but they had a very small budget for ad spend. And then to have to pay for management costs on top of that, to have to pay for me to do the management of their ads wasn't going to be the most efficient use of their budget. So I realized, like, oh, what if I could create a course showing these business owners how to run their own Facebook ads? They can use as small of a budget as they like, and they can maximize the results that they're getting. So that was my very first course, and that one went really well. And that kind of happened around the same time I realized I didn't want the agency. So I slowly fired my clients and launched that course a couple more times, launched a new course, and eventually launched a whole bunch of different courses about various different things in the marketing world. Because I thought that you had to have a whole library of different products that people could come and pick and choose from. The problem was that I didn't have any specialty. People didn't know why they would come to me. They were like, "Oh, this is the generalist marketing chick. She has a podcast about general marketing stuff, and her podcast advice is amazing." But when they wanted to learn about Facebook ads, they went to the Facebook ads expert. When they wanted to learn about Instagram marketing, they went to the Instagram expert. Nobody came to actually buy from me. And it was really tough. It was really tough. And I realized when I sat down with a business coach at the end of 2018, and I said to her, I said, like, I've got all these things I want to launch in 2019. I want to launch a course about Pinterest. I want to launch a course about this. I want to launch a course about this. But I have this problem where I don't have a niche. Nobody knows me for anything. And she looked at me and she's like, well, obviously your thing is launching because you love launching all this stuff and everybody else hates it. And that was the light bulb moment where I was like,
That's
okay.
what I should be doing. Love
Yeah, and everyone thinks that you find that sweet spot, you find that niche, it just comes to you in this burst of inspiration, but it's actually I wouldn't have found that had I not gone down the wrong paths first.
Mhm.
And now that I've found it, it's like, "Oh, this feels right. This is good. This is where I need to be right now." And that doesn't mean it won't change in the future. It probably will, especially like as the world shifts, as the business world shifts. It's happened in the past, it will again. But for right now, I'm like, this is what feels good. So that's kind of been that's the journey. It's been a bit of a journey.
Absolutely has, and to get an online business, because I think a lot of people will be interested in like this because I like
Mm.
you said, see the Daily Mail articles and all that sort of stuff. To get an online business to get to 7 figures is
Mm.
massive. So at what point financially did all of this start paying off for you, and what did that look like? And then what sort of systems and stuff did you have to bring into the business? Were you ready for that? How did that evolve?
Yeah, so it was a lot of years of struggle. So I started that first business I started in 2016, that e-commerce business,
Yep.
and it wasn't until 2020 that finally I was like, "Oh, I'm earning enough money that I can actually live off comfortably now."
Yeah. Yep.
Before that, it was very tight. It was feast or famine. You know, there were good months where I had clients who paid all their invoices on time, and then there were bad months where I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be a few days late on my mortgage payment." So there were a few years of that, and then 2020 was the year where it was finally I had the right product, the right messaging, and perfect timing because the product that really took off was the podcast launch plan. That was the first new course that I launched after I niched down into launching, and it was that combination, exactly what people needed. So many people were wanting to start podcasts. Then the pandemic hit. People were at home. They had this extra time, and they were like, "Okay, great. Let's buy this. Let's start a podcast." And that was the big turning point for me. And then even though sales of that have died off since people have gone back to work and all of that, the income that that generated has helped me to be able to create other programs. So now I have Launch Magic, which is my signature course that I launch twice a year. And having had that income come in from the podcast launch plan has meant that I've been able to reinvest. I was able to invest in a copywriter to write really good copy for my launch. I was able to invest a lot into Facebook ads to grow my email list. And that momentum has helped me. Um, so yeah, it's very much now launch based business.
Yep.
Um, so you know, it might not be seven figures this next financial year. Uh, who knows what the world's going to bring? But having having now got those courses as those assets, I know that they are like a tap that I can turn on and turn off to bring in revenue. And to answer your second question about the systems and processes, I was not ready. I thought I was, you know, like I was like, yeah, I've been in business for years. Like I'm so ready to scale. And I didn't even have, I was still doing my customer support. And it was very quickly, it became very obvious to me that that was not going to be good for my mental health. Like I could not keep checking my email inbox every single morning with this horrible feeling of dread of what is today going to bring. And but it forced me to document all of it. It forced me to get that off my plate. And now, but then I guess the downside was, of course, with quick growth, there was a lot of duct tape that we threw into place
Mhm.
to kind of get things going and get things to pull things together as quickly as we could. And now what this year has been a really great time to sort of stop, reevaluate. We're not spending $10,000 a day on Facebook ads anymore. So we're not getting thousands of customer support emails and it's things are nice and slow. And it's like, okay, cool. How can we streamline this and get everything ready for the next stage of growth?
Next time you have
Uh,
that crazy influx of
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think because growth's not always linear and we think it's going to be, but sometimes it's little bursts and then other times it's slow and then sometimes you actually go backwards for a while and that's cool too.
Absolutely. And I think it just would have been incredible to see your business shift and all of the things you wouldn't have been expecting. You would have probably had support processes in place. You would have had financial processes in place of dealing with all of your funds and all that sort of stuff. And then having to sit there and go, oh my God, now I've got to reevaluate them. So it's almost like you're going through startup phase for the business again and again and again. Each time the business is shifting in a different direction. And I think this is what we forget. And the other thing when we're talking about that is you're in the midst actually having to do these launches and do these services at the same time as having to build all those business processes. So a big thing I like to talk to people about is, making sure we're getting these processes in place before we get to that point. And like you said, we can't do that completely because we don't know what that's going to look like and what sort of cracks that's going to
Yeah.
form from doing that. But it's a really amazing story to hear how that's happened and how you've evolved through it. One of the things obviously you did through that was launch the podcast, which was then the reason that you launched the podcast um, course for people to launch a podcast. So when you started the podcast, that was it 2018 you started that?
It was, yes. You've got a better memory than me. I would have had to sit here and think, count backwards. Yeah, the podcast turned 4 on the 1st of May this year, so 4 years
That
old.
is insane. And the reason I do know that is because I'm almost just completed going through all of your 500 and so episodes, listening.
Wow.
I think I commented on one of our mutual friends, Ronsley's post when you were doing a
Oh,
podcast with
yeah.
him that I hear your voice more than I hear my husband's voice because I've been listening to it that much in the last 4 months.
I remember that comment.
Wonderful. So yeah, lots of podcasting. And I guess if you've got to 500, there's obviously a reason you've been podcasting. So I guess for me and probably for you is we look at podcasting as a marketing medium. Would you say that you look at it like that? That's your
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so just a bit of background, I guess, for everybody when we're talking about marketing mediums, these could be using Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, podcasting, YouTube, whatever it wants,
Blogging.
what I call
The old
blogging.
school way.
Yeah, exactly. Any of these things, it's just a way to connect with people and start building relationships. So when you first started podcasting, what did that look like? Did you start building a community around your podcast or how did that evolve from
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. So I was I mean, 2018 wasn't really early to the podcasting train in terms of, I have a friend who's been podcasting since 2004, but I guess compared to where we are now, it was still pretty early and there weren't many great business podcasts in the same format that mine is in. So mine is very short episodes with lots of actionable advice. It's occasionally there's an interview episode, but that's not the structure of the show. Whereas back when I launched mine in 2018, most business podcasts were 45 minutes to 1 hour long and they had a guest and you had to listen to the guest talk about what they had for breakfast for 30 minutes before you could get one tiny little actionable tip. And that was the feedback I kept getting from people was, oh, we're sick of these podcasts where we'd get like one tiny thing out of an hour of listening. And that was the light bulb moment of, wonder if I could create something that's bite size. So super easy for me to create. I don't have to spend that much time outlining each episode. I don't have to spend much time editing, recording, and make it super actionable. And that's where the whole podcast idea came from. So I started building that podcast. I didn't build a community directly around it straight away, but I realized pretty soon that actually I could monetize, I could create some kind of product that would be like that next step. So I built a membership around the podcast and the membership was monthly marketing masterclasses. They got bonus podcast episodes. They got an execution plan to execute on whatever topic we'd looked at that month. In hindsight, now I'm like, oh, that was not the right format for that was not a membership. But at the time, I thought this was going to work really well. And it was great because it was a great way to monetize my really engaged community. But I could have done a better job of building that actual community around it.
Yeah. And so from that point then to now, how would you sort of categorize the success that you've got from the podcast through your business? Like how have you then, I guess,
Mhm.
transferred that to getting some benefits and don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, this is fun to do this as well, but we've got to, as a business, we've got to make sure these things financially are viable. So
Oh, and
you,
yeah, and fun is good, but after like 500 episodes, there's times when you're like, "Oh, this is not fun anymore."
I don't want to hear
I
that.
mean, don't get me wrong, I go through phases. Right now, I'm super excited about my podcast because I'm recording slightly longer episodes, so they're like 20 minutes now instead of 5 minutes like they were before, and I'm actually really starting to enjoy it, and it's become a game. I'm like, "Okay, cool. Let's really grow the podcast this year." Like, this is my focus right now is let's grow the podcast. So yeah, I go through times when I have fun with it, and then I have times when I'm like, I'm busy with a million other things and I just don't want to record a podcast episode because I'm exhausted. But that's when I'm like, okay, hang on, keep going because this is actually a great way for you to reach new people. It's a great way for you to grow your audience. For me, I have so many students who come through my course who I've never ever come across them on social media, they've never replied to an email of mine, anything like that. And then when I ask them, hey, like, how did you come across me? They're like, oh, I've been listening to your podcast for 4 years, you know? And it's like, oh, okay. So there's people out there who are listening to my podcast who are super engaged in my content. And when I sell them something, they'll buy it.
Mm,
So it's really great for nurturing. It's also a great way to help people who, for whatever reason, can't or aren't ready to invest in paid products or paid services. And it's been a really great way to meet new connections because when you have a podcast, you can invite awesome guests on to interview them and get to know them that way. And it's a great way to build your network.
absolutely. So really for you, obviously you're a little bit biased because you are podcasting, but this if
Yes.
you had to start your business over again, would you choose to do podcasting again?
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And for you, for your business, it's really podcasting, Instagram, and email marketing that you use as your marketing funnels?
Yeah, Instagram's not really. Instagram's like a I do it when I feel like it thing now. I actually just recorded an episode about this morning. So my main focus is creating content for the podcast. So I kind of start the whole process. I outlining, okay, this is what the podcast episodes are going to be. Then from there, I think, okay, these are what the emails are going to be for this week. And then Instagram, if I feel like it, I do it. If I don't, I don't. And ironically, since I stopped saying that I have to post how many times a week, since I stopped putting that pressure on myself to post, since I stopped guilting myself for not posting, I now feel inspired to post again. And Facebook ads is the other one. So that's been a really good a good way to drive traffic because you know, email and podcast, they're great for getting that content out there, but they don't naturally reach more people on their own. You kind of have to be proactive about that. And that's where running Facebook ads, that's where reaching out to people, doing podcast interviews, teaching to other people's audiences. That's where where I get my content in front of other people.
Perfect. For the new and aspiring business owners out there that are considering adding in podcasting to their marketing funnel, what advice would you give them about starting and launching and getting it going?
Yeah, I would say make sure you know your topic that you want to podcast about and make sure that there's something that differentiates you from all of the others. So, not going into podcasting and saying, oh, I like this podcast over here and they've got thousands of reviews, so they must have loads of listeners. I'm just going to steal their format because obviously that works and their topic's awesome. So, I'm going to do the same, but I'm just going to do it better because that's not going to work. Why would somebody who's already listening to that podcast come over and listen to yours unless it is dramatically better. So we want to find out like where are those what is that opportunity for you? What are other people in your area talking about, in your industry talking about? What else what are they not talking about? What formats do they have? What formats do they not have? What's working, what's not working? And getting out there and also talking to people if you already have an audience, finding out what they look for in a podcast episode, what they look for in an interview, what they do they want solo? Do they want multiple hosts? I mean, the options are endless. And there's no rule that it has to be an interview based show. There's no rule about anything. So finding out what people want and what they need, and then creating something that gives them that in a way that stands out from what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I did mention it before, but I did do your podcasting course, which I
Yeah.
really loved because, and something I've learned off you, which I think's worth mentioning in here, is you're a big advocate for saying whenever you're doing a course or whatever it is, don't give everybody every bit of information you have, only give them what is needed to achieve that end result. And that's what I loved about your course is I didn't want to learn how to edit podcasts or do any of that sort of stuff. I just wanted to get it out there and get it done. And it was so simple. I got into the thing, looked at what I needed to do that day, ticked it off and done. We moved through the steps and got it done. So I highly recommend that for anyone that is looking to do a podcast. And Steph, where do people go to find more information about you and what you do offer?
Yes. So I live on the internet at stephtaylor.co. I'm on Instagram at stephtaylor.co. I might not post all the time, but actually, I'm about to start posting because I'm about to go to Europe for a month. So my life's about to get interesting again. I finally have things I can talk about. But I still do check my DMs over there, even if I'm not always posting on there. I have a podcast called Socialette, which has more than 500 episodes to binge listen to. And we've had more than 1.5 million downloads so far. So some
That's
people apparently think
massive.
it's good.
Got my hand up over here. Love it. So, and I'm looking forward to hearing all of the details of the Europe trip when you do get back and having our second interview.
Yes, I'm excited.
To finish this off, if you could give one piece of advice to people that are starting a business right now, in whatever field it might be, what would that piece of advice be?
Be open to it looking different to how you planned for it to look. I mean, I never would have guessed 6 years ago that my business would look anything like it does now. I didn't even know what launching was 6 years ago, right? And now this is what I'm doing. So be open, like know what you want that vision to be. I always knew I wanted a business that would give me financial freedom, that would give me the ability to travel, time freedom, location freedom, but I also I wasn't fixed on it looking a certain way or on being a certain way. So I've got the outcome that I wanted and I've just kind of gone with the journey, the process that's brought me to here. So yeah, be open to it looking very different.
And on that, you really are living the dream that a lot of people are aspiring for right now. You're just about to go for a trip to Europe. You've got an online business that's running itself while you're gone, and you can run when you're over there. And yeah, financial success, got it to 7 figures. This is amazing. So huge achievement and something I think a lot
Thank
of
you.
aspiring business owners are looking to achieve. So thank you for taking the time to share some of those lessons that you've learnt with us. It's been really awesome. I can't wait to have you on for the second part.
I'm excited to come back. Thank you so much for having
Yes.
me this first time. And thank you for inviting me back.
Thank you, Steph. And you have a wonderful trip, and we can't wait to hear from you.